Pirates were fully into the future now, searching for new heroes that could join Stargell and Bronze outside their sparkling new stadium. Kendall blossomed into one of the pillars of the club. The team was spiraling fast and quickly fell to 20 games below 500. I'm going into Operation Shutdown. Littlefield's mystically vague responses continued to frustrate a fan base that endured so much turnover. The Pirates either failed to develop their players or badly mismanaged them. There was no champagne in the dugout, just questions about the future of a directionless franchise.
Listen to the game with my radio on. I belong to the rhythm of a bumper song. To a bar full count with nobody out. Stop the feline drive, everybody shout. Root, root, root for our home team. A new pirate generation, everybody shout. Let's go Pirates! Every side of the Pittsburgh Pirates at the old ball game, everybody shout. Let's go Pirates!
Let's go back to 1996. Feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? Back then, Kevin McClatchy had just turned 33. He had saved the Pirates from moving below the Mason-Dixon line, and fans were rejoicing. They had a young, motivated owner that was looking to build a new ballpark and a winning culture for their treasured team. Funny what time does to perspective. 11 years later, and fans were just about fed up with McClatchy. Turns out, going 211 games under 500 sours a fan base when your mantra is supposedly all about winning. While he managed to eliminate much of the debt that plagued the Pirates when he took over, he didn't have the necessary resources to invest in the team and produce a winning product. That's where Bob Nutting comes in. Since he became involved in 1996, he and his family had slowly bought out shares of the team and rose through the ranks, becoming board chairman in 2003. He had originally loaned $2 million to McClatchy's group to assist in the purchasing of the team, and was seen by many as a stabilizing, business-minded force in those early ownership days. He made his wealth as CEO of Ogden Newspapers, which his great-grandfather founded, and as chairman of Seven Springs, a ski resort south of Pittsburgh. When he took over in January of 2007, he stressed how much his family wanted to win with the Pirates, and fans and media seemed to react positively. More importantly, he hammered home how the Pirates needed to restock their farm system and build for the future. Well, the Pirates held the 4th overall pick in the 2007 draft. That's a great spot to grab an impactful young player. Matt Wieters is still there too, a catcher seen as the brightest hitting prospect in the draft. Surely they'll draft him. Daniel Moscas. Okay, so he's a pitcher, that can be good too. And he's projected as a relief pitcher. And he had a losing record in college. And he wasn't supposed to go in the top 10. Oh, the Pirates didn't have to spend more money to sign him. Where have I heard that before? This pick confirmed the fears that many had about this new ownership regime. It would be more of the same penny pinching. The fans were furious. The media jumped all over Nutting and Littlefield, although it was revealed that Nutting denied Littlefield's request for adequate signing bonus money to get Wieters. As for Moscas, he wasn't at the draft in person because he was pitching for Clemson that day. He gave up 9 hits and 6 runs in just 5 innings of work. It wasn't just the fans and media that were upset. The Pirates started the season dealing with a grievance filed by reliever Solomon Torres. In his contract negotiations with the team in 2006, he claimed that Littlefield promised, albeit not in writing, that they would consider renting one of the baseball academies Torres helped build in the Dominican Republic. Because of this, Torres, who didn't have an agent during the talks, agreed to less than market value for his contract. However, the Pirates never toured his academies, nor did Torres hear from them about renting them. He would drop his grievance in August, solely due to his religious beliefs. His teammates were getting fed up with all the losing, most notably Ian Snell, who, after a 10-1 pounding by the Angels, let his frustrations fly to reporters. The fans were fed up as well, and they organized a walkout from the Pirates' June 30th game. They hyped it up so much that ownership asked the TV crew not to televise nor discuss it. Organizers got former Pirates pitcher Doc Ellis to speak beforehand, where he talked about his embarrassment about being associated with the franchise. In the end, only around 1,000 of the fans in attendance actually left, and those that did leave received some boos from the ones that stuck around. On the field, manager Jim Tracy couldn't get anything moving. Granted, they started the season by sweeping the Astros, the first time they had done so since 1991, but they followed that up by losing 11 of their next 13 games. Trading for Adam LaRoche before the season added power to the lineup, and Tom Gorzelani emerged as a starter with ace potential, logging 14 wins. Besides Gorzelani, though, the pitching was again one of the worst staffs in baseball, and gave up nearly 50 more runs than in 2006. It ultimately led to Tracy's dismissal at the end of 2007. The problem with Jim Tracy was it never seemed like he cared. When facing the media, he never challenged his team and never tried to light a spark under them to get them going. According to players, it was the same in the locker room. LaRoche commented that despite the players not being super responsible for failures, Tracy was so laid back that he could get taken advantage of. Even after getting swept in a 4-game series by the Padres, Tracy's only comments were, "You've got to give them credit. I don't think we did anything to embarrass ourselves out there." The strangest thing about Tracy was his never-ending attachment to his former club, the Los Angeles Dodgers, whom he brought to an NL West title. He often told his current Pirates to play like his former Dodgers. He instructed Chris Duffy, a line drive hitter, to hit ground balls like Dave Roberts. Duffy started 2006 incredibly poorly, and after getting demoted, went home for a month on a personal leave, citing a lack of desire to play professional sports. Tracy told Jack Wilson, then a 3-time Gold Glove runner-up, that he didn't like how he played ground balls and that he should mimic Cesar Izturis. Wilson had his worst defensive season in 2006, leading to Izturis being acquired and Tracy pushing for the team to trade Wilson in 2007. This request was denied, and Wilson batted .401 over the final 2 months of the season. The front office also experienced massive turnover. McClatchy officially announced he was stepping down before the season ended, ending his involvement with the team. Littlefield tried some last-ditch moves to save his job, including a preposterous deal that swapped 26-year-old outfielder Raji Davis with 31-year-old pitcher Matt Morris, who was making $10 million to post an ERA over 6. Morris immediately became the highest-paid player in franchise history. The move maybe could have been justified if the team wasn't 19 games under 500 at that point. Needless to say, it didn't pan out, and Littlefield was shown the door before the season was over. While a former Pirate was setting controversial records, his former team was miring in the basement. However, the old staff was gone, and it was Bob Nutting's turn to try and save the Pirates. The streak had reached 15 years. Neil Huntington knew what he was getting into when he signed on as the Pirates' new general manager. He came from a nearly identical situation with the Cleveland Indians, a team that had seen lots of success in the 2000s, with a market size comparable to Pittsburgh's. With first-hand experience, he knew what he wanted to do, despite how unpopular it would be. Build for the future, and sell high on players to acquire depth. Basically what fans figured the Pirates had been doing since 1993. Some even theorized that winning in 2008 would be the worst thing the Pirates could do, as that would make Huntington's decisions that much harder. Not only that, but the fractures between ownership and the fan base would undoubtedly grow wider. In spring training, the new regime preached patience with the fan base. However, the lack of player movement from last season's 68-win team baffled the Yinzers who traveled to Bradenton. New President Frank Coonelly learned firsthand how disgruntled the supporters were, getting heckled over a lack of anything tangible from the last 4 months. What Huntington did do when he took over was try to improve the organizational structure, including a new Dominican Republic Baseball Academy to improve the international scouting, and a refurbishing of the spring training facilities. He even helped improve PNC Park, converting the old Outback Steakhouse into a sports bar. What the team gained in fan experience and fine dining, it lost in Bloomin' Onion sales. Huntington's international work became more public after the airing of the $1 Million Arm Hunt, a reality show that focused on finding hidden baseball talent in India. 2 cricket players, Rinku Singh and Dinesh Patel, won the show's contest and received formal baseball training in the United States, despite neither of them having held a baseball until that year. The Pirates signed both players into their minor league system. Without a lot of turnover and the looming thought of the team being blown up, it was time to see what new manager John Russell could bring to the field. One wrinkle Russell brought was his desire to bat the pitcher 8th rather than 9th. A curious decision that went against most conventional baseball wisdom. Regardless, Russell had the team challenging .500 in July. Nate McLouth had blossomed in center field, earning a trip to the All-Star game and a Gold Glove. Unfortunately for Pirates fans, Huntington did what he said he would do and reset, which included parting with one of the team's stars from the 2000s, Jason Bay. While he never ascended to superstardom, Bay was undoubtedly the Pirates' star throughout the mid-2000s, earning a roaring applause when he was announced during the 2006 All-Star game. He was used as a piece in a 3-team trade that sent Boston's Manny Ramirez to the Dodgers. In Boston, he aided 2 playoff teams in 2008 and 2009 that came up short of a World Series. Bay returned to the All-Star game in 2009 and won his first Silver Slugger. In 2010, he signed a 4-year deal with the Mets, but he suffered a concussion and missed much of 2011 with a rib injury. Those injuries would ultimately lead to a slow decline, ending his career in 2014. In 2019, Bay was inducted into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. In return for Bay, the Pirates received Brandon Moss, Brian Morris, Andy LaRoche, and Craig Hansen, and fans were pretty pleased with the haul. It was seen as proof of Huntington's promise, young talent to replace the established core. So, how did Huntington's haul do? Hansen was a reliever that washed out of the league in 2009. Andy LaRoche, Adam's younger brother and the new third baseman, was incredibly forgettable over 3 seasons in Pittsburgh before getting shipped to the Athletics. Moss, seen as Jason Bay's replacement in the outfield, never got anything going while on the Pirates, mustering a .236 batting average in 2009 and lasting only 17 games into 2010. Morris was 21 at the time and seen as a top pitching prospect, but he became an average reliever that made it to the majors in 2012. He was later traded for a competitive balance round pick from the Marlins. However, the worst trade Huntington made that year came from what seemed like an inconsequential move, Jose Bautista to the Blue Jays for Robinzon Diaz. The headlines at the time would have you believe that the Pirates got a good deal, with some even saying that they fleeced Toronto. However, looking at this trade today, it would be unthinkable to make this move. Jose's name has come up a couple times before so far, as he was snatched away in the infamous Rule 5 draft and then returned to the team in the Chris Benson trade. Over 4 years on the Pirates, Bautista managed 43 home runs. In 2010, he hit 54 for the Blue Jays, which led the league. Bautista turned into a superstar north of the border, making 6 straight All-Star games, winning 2 home run titles, and winning 3 Silver Sluggers. He also brought Toronto to the playoffs for the first time in 22 years, cementing himself as an icon in the city. All in all, he added 301 home runs to his Pirates total once he got to Toronto, and the Pirates got a 36-year-old catcher who hit .279 for 1 season. Not every trade went as bad as these two, as evidenced by the trade of Xavier Nady to the Yankees. Along with outfield prospect Jose Tabata, the Pirates acquired starter Jeff Karstens. Karstens provided immediate returns, pitching 6 shutout innings against the Cubs in his Bucks debut. His next start came against the Diamondbacks, dueling the legendary Randy Johnson. What followed was completely unprecedented. In the 4th inning, Freddie Sanchez homered to put the Pirates up 1-0. In the 8th inning, Doug Minkiewicz stumbled to score Karstens and put them up 2-0. When Karstens went back out to the mound in the 8th, he had yet to allow a hit, nor had he surrendered a walk. Jeff Karstens, in his 11th Major League start, was 2 innings away from the 18th perfect game in MLB history, and the first in Pirates history. His first pitch of the inning got a flyout. He followed that up with a 6-pitch groundout. With a 1-1 count on the 3rd batter of the inning, Karstens threw what he called a cement mixer slider that got roped into the outfield for a 2-out double. The hope for a no-hitter and perfection were lost in an instant. Karstens would finish off the game, giving up a 2nd hit and a walk to salvage a complete game shutout. It was one of the finest pitching performances in franchise history. If the rest of the team could have pitched 10% as well as Karstens, then perhaps Huntington's first year would have been more successful. For the 2nd time in franchise history, no starting pitcher had 10 wins on the year. The staff turned in a 5.08 ERA, their highest mark since 1953, and broke the franchise record with 822 earned runs. Worse still, Tom Gorzelani followed his 2007 breakout year with a 7-week demotion to AAA. He became more known for his infamous bobblehead this season than quality pitching. The front office repeatedly blamed this on pitching coach Jeff Andrews, who was fired after his first season on the job. While no one could complain about shipping out Andrews, the organizational loss that hurt was longtime broadcaster Lanny Fratteri, who stunningly retired after 30 years and over 5,000 games. Fratteri became the longest tenured broadcaster in team history after taking over in 1976, and became known for his signature
There was no doubt about it!
after every Pirates win, no matter how close the score. Oftentimes, fans would bring a radio to the ballpark so they could hear Fratteri call the game while they watched. Fratteri bridged the gap for fans who couldn't attend or watch the game, and his voice defined Pirates baseball for so many. His presence would be sorely missed. In 2008, Huntington set out a plan for his first year at the helm, and despite grumblings from the fan base, he stuck to it. The team went 17-37 after the trade deadline and officially tied the Phillies for the longest streak of losing seasons in sports history. They cemented that in the most fitting way they could, leading the Giants 5-0 before giving up 10 runs in the 4th inning. One more season until history. On February 1st, 2009, the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Arizona Cardinals 27-23 to secure their 6th Super Bowl title. The game has been consistently ranked as one of the best of all time, thanks in large part to James Harrison's pick six and Santonio Holmes' last-second toe-tap touchdown. The title put the Steelers back in the lead for the most Super Bowl championships in the NFL. On June 12, 2009, the Pittsburgh Penguins defeated the Detroit Red Wings 2-1 in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. In a rematch of 2008's final, the Penguins got revenge on Detroit and secured the franchise's 3rd title. It was the first for the young duo of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, and an affirmation of their high statuses in the league. 2 of the Big Four's titles were now held in the Steel City, and there was no doubt that Pittsburgh was a city of champions. Yeah, I know. On September 7th, 2009, the Chicago Cubs defeated the Pirates 4-2, giving the Pirates loss number 82 on the season. The record was theirs, 17 straight losing seasons. Over a decade and a half of failing to even be an average baseball team. The slogan for 2009 was just taunting at this point. Pride. What was there to be proud of? They hadn't lost 100 games since 2001. Maybe they could get back to 70-plus wins. That would be something to be proud of. Passion. And it's definitely needed to keep coming back to this year after year. And finally, Pittsburgh Pirates. The constant in Pittsburgh sports fans' existences. They're always going to be there, and they're always going to be the same unchanging entity. At least you knew what to expect since 1993. Although this year was supposed to be different. Again. John Russell tried to instill this, noting that losing was not an acceptable way of life for a Pirate. There was definitely hope early on with an 11-10 April, thanks in large part to new pitching coach Joe Kerrigan getting much better results than his predecessor did. He brought in a more analytics-based approach of choosing pitches based on batters' tendencies. Makes you wonder what Jeff Andrews was telling them. Minor league free agent Garrett Jones was a surprise breakout, adding power to an offense that sorely needed it. However, May once again doomed their season, as an 8-game losing streak ensured they would never get over 500 again. They also lost their 17th consecutive game to the rival Brewers, the second longest streak of losing between any 2 teams in baseball history. Around mid-season, Russell had begun to turn the ship around, having them hovering around 500 in July. Nevertheless, Neil Huntington stuck to his word. By the time he was done making moves in 2009, the players still on the team had seen an entire starting infield and 4 outfielders traded over 368 days. Players noted how crazy it was that this much turnover had occurred on a major league roster. Nate McLouth, 2008's breakout all-star outfielder, was shipped off to Atlanta for a trio of prospects. This was unexpected for a lot of fans, with some resigning their fandom because of this move. However, it had a purpose, as it opened the door for the 2005 first-round pick. He was the brightest prospect the Pirates had seen in years, and he finished off the season batting .286. He represented hope like the franchise hadn't seen in a long, long time. However, this debut was overshadowed by the gut punch of 2 other major moves. The team's longtime double-play duo, Freddie Sanchez and Jack Wilson, were shipped away soon after. Sanchez was off to San Francisco for 20-year-old pitching prospect Tim Alderson, Many were excited for this trade, as Alderson was considered a top 50 prospect and was coming from an organization that had developed the likes of Tim Lincecum, Matt Cain, and Madison Bumgarner. However, Alderson slowly faded away in the Pirates' minor league system. He never made it to the majors. Wilson was headed to Seattle along with Ian Snell for a handful of prospects, notably infielders Ronnie Cedeno and Jeff Clement. Cedeno tried to replace Wilson at shortstop, and while he showed flashes, he never quite put everything together and was off the team by 2012. Clement was seen as the first baseman of the future, but over 77 games on the Pirates, he batted under 200 and was out of baseball by 2013. Best friends off the field, Jack and Freddie had jointly tried to get their contracts extended. Jack even rejected his original offer because Freddie hadn't agreed to one yet. Despite their wishes, the former high school teammates were fittingly moved on the same day. Both took the news hard. Jack was moved earlier in the day and cried on his way to the ballpark to see the team for the final time. Freddie thought he was joking at first, but the realization brought him to tears as well. Jack just wished the team wasn't on the road so he could say goodbye to the fans one more time and let them know how much they meant to him. Freddie's trade was announced later, and he said moving on was easier knowing Jack wasn't on the team either. Both were faces of the franchise for years, beloved by the fans for their on-field play and off-field community work. Even when Freddie won a ring with the Giants in 2010, he never spoke badly about his former team, and it still hurt him that he couldn't be on the Pirates team that turned it around. He got to return in June 2010 and receive an ovation from the fans he meant so much to. Jack never got to make his return as a player, as a combination of injuries and playing in the American League limited his opportunities to do so, and he ended up retiring in 2012. As Freddie put it when he got traded, Jack in my mind is the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's the face of the Pirates. This was his team. It hurts to see him go. Lasting's Millage got duped. Twice. In the span of 2 weeks. The first time was a little less obvious than the second. Millage was wearing the proverbial rose-tinted glasses when looking at the season in progress during a routine post-game interview. He noted that all we need to do is win our next game, 1-0. And if we do that, people are still going to say we just got outscored, 36-1. It doesn't matter. We're still 7-8. We're still having a good season. We had a bad series. That 36-1 number might stand out to you, and it should, because this interview came after an absolute shellacking at the hands of the Milwaukee Brewers. Final score? 20-0. It was their worst loss in the 124 years the franchise had existed. It was the peak, or rather, the valley. At this point, the product being put on the field was unsalvageable. This was only the 15th game of the season, but those 8 losses had each been by at least 6 runs, leaving the combined score in those games at 83-13. In the games where Pirates were losing, they were being destroyed. But maybe Lastings was right. Maybe, despite the massive losses they just endured, that series would be forgotten as the season went on, and he was kind of right in some regard. For the next game they played, they lost 7-3 against the Astros, and the next time they played the Brewers, they lost 17-3. Poor Lastings Millage, man. The team's 7-8 record had duped him into believing that maybe, just maybe, this season would be different. And maybe it had pulled a lot of the fan base in as well. But it wasn't. It was a sad, slow march to the finish, and an end to any sort of hope that had been built up over the last 10 seasons. Statistically, the season was a nightmare. 5 of the starting pitchers in the rotation carried double-digit losses by the final game. Charlie Morton had it the worst, finishing with a 2-12 record and a 7.57 ERA. In the offensive department, the numbers were just as tragic. The team bottomed out in batting average, coming up with a paltry .242. Like a blown transformer, there wasn't any power to be found in their lineup. Their top 3 home run hitters combined for 53, one less than the league leader. Oh, hey Jose. But perhaps the most damning metric was their road record. In the 82 games away from the friendly confines, they managed just 17 wins. They barely showed up outside of PNC Park, except to get absolutely pummeled. To put this number in an even more disheartening light, 7 of those wins came against the Cubs and Rockies, meaning they only earned 10 wins against the rest of their road opponents. The Pirates visiting another team's ballpark in 2010 was the baseball equivalent of the cupcake games of college football. These kinds of games are a chance for the smaller team to receive exposure on a national stage and a financial boost for the program, even if it means getting blown out of the water for 4 quarters. The host is all but guaranteed to win every one of these games, and they're essentially tune-ups for the players on the other team. But for the 2010 Pirates, the only benefit they received was one less game on the schedule. Besides the 20-0 embarrassment, the Pirates were participants in another memorable annihilation. On June 8th, the Pirates were the first victims of a new superstar. One of the most highly touted pitching prospects in recent memory made his debut at home against the struggling Bucks. 14 strikeouts later, baseball had witnessed the birth of a torrential force on the mound, and 10 years later, he would bring Washington its first World Series title and claim the series MVP award. The legend of Steven Strasburg had begun, and the Pirates were just the backdrop for his success. It's hard to be positive when talking about this year's team because so much of what they attempted backfired instantaneously. Ryan Church was seen as a revival signing for the team, as a former power hitter who could rediscover his old form. He batted .182 and was traded after 69 games. Akinori Iwamura was seen as a potential number 2 hitter and a good on-baseman, but he struggled with injuries, fielding, and hitting, leading to a September release. Anyone who watched a single inning of the 2010 season could have told you how this story would play out. At the end of the season, John Russell was shown the door. The 6th manager of the streak had continually frustrated and demoralized onlookers to the destruction by simply staring ahead blankly in the face of it. He was the physical embodiment of his team's play. Uninspiring, complacent, and virtually non-existent. He never got mad at players. He never really pushed his players at all. Russell was just kind of dragged along downhill by his shoelaces. The rent had come due and he couldn't pay it. There were only a few bright spots to be found in the endless sea of mediocrity that was the Pirates lineup, but the brightest came from an unexpected place, the bullpen. Evan Meek, acquired 3 years earlier in the Rule 5 draft, put together an incredible first half with a league-leading 96 ERA. This effort was enough to earn him an unlikely spot in the All-Star Game rotation. In a decade that had been full of nagging issues the team had yet to change, the one positive that remained was players who got a chance where they wouldn't have otherwise. The Pirates were still good enough for that, but, as had been the case in so many other instances, the team was only allowed to show up on the big stage. Their presence was all that was really asked. But maybe it wasn't about that. Remember how I mentioned that Lastings Millage got duped twice? The other time came a couple weeks later. In the 4th inning in a game against the Cubs, Millage cracked a pitch deep towards the left field wall. It was gone. He knew it was gone. As he raised his fists, the fireworks and celebratory music backed up his belief. So he slowed his pace after crossing second base. A 3-run homer secured. Until, that is, he was tagged out. The ball hadn't cleared the wall at all. The pyrotechnics guy and the scoreboard operator had been misled. And so, Lastings had to take the slow walk of shame back to the bullpen. He still did get credit for a 2-run double, but was charged with an error. It's hard to find a full video of this play, but we do have this image of the aftermath in the dugout. Here's Lastings, looking like an embarrassed kid who got caught writing love notes in class. And there's Kutch, holding back his laughter like that same kid's best friend sitting right behind him. When asked about the play after the game, Millage remarked, "I think that was the most exciting double in PNC Park history." I can't verify the validity of that statement, but I can offer you this. Why is this game remembered by anyone today? Even if the only people who do remember it are you, me, and the 11,085 fans who bought a ticket, what do we take away from it? It was an essentially meaningless win at the beginning of a historically bad season. I could spit the numbers at you and have you sort it out for yourself, but that would be an ultimately useless exercise. Because if you were to analyze the data of the 2000s Pirates in their entirety and settle on this game, that Millage play would look a lot less like this, and a lot more like this. But despite being duped into a silly error and probably being laughed at by Kutch, I can't help feeling that Lastings had the right idea. In the face of impending disaster on the field that he was unknowingly careening toward, he stopped and took a moment to enjoy it. He took his eyes off the bases in front of him and looked right up into the night sky to watch the fireworks and listen to the music. After all, it was a pretty fun show while it lasted. When we inevitably reach the point where the new pirate generation who grew up in the 2000s loses its new car shine, what will be the lesson learned from this time in history? What was the point of sticking with the team entrenched in the mud of baseball mediocrity and continuing to come back year after year? Because at the end of the day, their fandom was only rewarded with 2 decades of bad baseball and a highly jaded opinion of one of America's oldest ball clubs. These revelations may be unpleasant, but they don't answer the most important questions. Why were these games played, and why did anyone bother to stick with this team? Before searching for the answer within myself, I decided to turn to the fellow devotees of this wayward ship, the fans. My college roommate and a couple buddies that love baseball came into town for his 21st. I wanted to take them to a night game. Because PNC was still so young, they were sold out and the only game that was available was an afternoon, a makeup for a snowed out game. One of my local friends left in the 9th because he had some things to do before he went out that night, and we discussed leaving. My buddy said he didn't know when he'd be back in such a cool park, so let's stay. A half hour later, we were screaming and high-fiving in the aisle. Baseball is an unpredictable agent. Despite how downtrodden a team can be, there's always the chance and the hope that this next pitch something great will happen. Or just wait till next inning, we've got our guy up. Because of the nature of the sport, baseball opens up the chance to lull yourself into a comfortable rhythm, only to yank you out with moments of hypercharged excitement. Even for the worst teams, great moments are only a pitch away. With the stadium being so empty all the time, you could shout things at Pujols or whoever else, and he could definitely hear you and sometimes respond. I was on a first-name basis with Lefty the beer guy, Kenny the lemonade guy, and Robert, our usher. With the community picnic type of feel that baseball games foster, it's easy to meet some memorable people who come to feel like old friends. The people that make up game day become a team of their own, with devoted fans who know their names and stories just as much as the lineup. Going to games as a kid, Kenny Geidel was someone that everyone knew. His voice carried throughout the stadium. It's hard to describe, but it was both high-pitched and somewhat raspy at the same time. At any point, you could look out into the patchy sea of seats and find him patrolling the aisles, hawking the lemonade perched on his shoulder. Fans and players alike celebrated his presence as a local icon. People like him and Phil Coyne became a part of the fabric of the Pittsburgh sports community. When Kenny passed away in 2011 and Phil passed in 2021, it felt like losing old friends. Can't count how many times the Buccos would bring in some washed-up vet, and an excited subset of the fan base would say, "This is our year," as I smacked my forehead in frustration. Complaining about the team and its management is a pastime of sports fans everywhere. Fan bases uniting in their seemingly futile cries of disappointment is almost as timeless as coming together to celebrate a victory. It wouldn't be a sports team without it. There's a poem by Robert Frost called The Woodpile. In it, Frost paints a picture of a traveler venturing through a barren, frozen forest. He considers turning back, but for whatever reason, decides to keep going, unsure of what he is looking for. He notes a small bird passing between the trees, but discards it as foolish. The bird, however, leads him to a discarded pile of wood, a curious sight to find so far into these lonely woods. The wood itself is rotten and decaying, having been left alone so long. He finds himself confused and somewhat depressed that someone would just leave this work out here undone. I thought that only someone who lived in turning to fresh tasks could so forget his handiwork on which he spent himself, the labor of his axe, and leave it there far from a useful fireplace to warm the frozen swamp as best it could, with the slow, smokeless burning of decay. One could ask themselves why the traveler would choose to ponder this weekend fire. Why observe something that was clearly left to rot? Perhaps out here he seeks something of human construction. Even if that something is somber, it's still thought-provoking and ultimately human. On one hand, this is a bit of a depressing notion. Someone's handiwork was left to struggle and rot in the middle of nowhere, far from anywhere where it could be utilized properly. But beyond that, there's the fire itself. Small fires still provide warmth to those sitting around them, and warming the frozen land has become something of a worthwhile task to this lonely fire. Even as it slowly burns away, it still warms the land around it for a time. And it's important to consider that given the right fuel, small fires can grow. In 2004, the Pirates drafted Neil Walker at number 11. In 2005, they took Andrew McCutchen. 2007 saw the signing of international amateur Starling Marte. 2008 brought Pedro Alvarez and Jordy Mercer. 2009 saw the signing of Gregory Polanco, and 2010 brought in Jameson Taillon. And following the disastrous 2010 season, the Pirates drafted Garrett Cole and Josh Bell. While the fire of the Pirates burned slowly and with little fuel, the team was building up its reserve of fresh firewood, and after the firing of John Russell, they brought in the man who would throw it all onto the pile at once. Over the next 2 years, that fire would grow and grow until 2013, when the curse of endless losing seasons was lifted. Led by McCutchen, the National League MVP, the Pirates were once again the talk of the league, with a revitalized core bringing new excitement to the city. And in the process, they accomplished the unthinkable. They made the playoffs.
McCutchen's throw. The runner breaks for the plate. Here's the throw. It is out. The Buccos win it.
It was an incredible sight for every Pirates fan. It felt like a dream, like something was out of place. The energy in PNC Park was palpable as the downtrodden club took its city into the great unknown, bringing them to the place that was endlessly promised by management. And they won.
Well hit to left. Deep and gone. That ball's hit well to left center field. Back toward the track. And that ball is gone. 1-2. Otto goes down swinging for the second. To second. That's it.
It was only a wild card game. For the new Pirate generation, it was vindication. It was an affirmation that their investment over so many lost seasons was worthwhile. Their team was a contender. All of the bad trades, busted drafts, and ridiculous drama felt as if it was a lifetime ago. And even though they lost in the next round, this team was finally in the place that it was always supposed to be. They would become a postseason fixture for years to come. The bad years finally over. And over those years, they would end up winning just the one wildcard game.